The air in the International Hotel's showroom thrummed with an energy that was almost physical, clung to the velvet drapes, shimmered in the spotlights, and vibrated through the very floorboards. Every night, for what felt like an eternity, it was the same. A crescendo of anticipation, a roar of adoration, and then him. Elvis. He stood backstage just moments before his cue. The sequin jumpsuit, heavy but familiar. His heart pounded a rhythm that was part excitement, part exhaustion. 837 consecutive sold-out shows. The number was a whisper in the halls, a headline in the papers, a legend in the making. Vegas was his kingdom, and he, Elvis Presley, was its undisputed king. Frankie, his stage manager and a quiet, steady presence for years, adjusted the microphone stand. One last time he caught Elvis's eye, a silent question in his gaze. "Ready, E.P.?" Frankie's voice was always calm, a soothing anchor in the storm of celebrity. Elvis took a deep breath, the scent of hairspray and old velvet filling his lungs. "As I'll ever be, Frankie." He flashed a practiced smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Lately, the smiles felt a little thinner, the energy a little more forced. The streak was magnificent, a testament to his enduring power, but it was also a gilded cage. Every night, the same songs, the same moves, the same screams. He loved his fans, truly he did. Their love was the fuel that kept him going. But sometimes he just wanted to breathe, to be plain old Elvis, not the king. "You know, Colonel Parker's been bragging all day about how you're invincible," Frankie murmured, adjusting a loose sequin on Elvis's collar. "Says you could perform through a hurricane." Elvis chuckled. A dry sound. "Yeah, well, the Colonel thinks money can buy sunshine, rain, and a hurricane all at once, if it makes a buck." Colonel Tom Parker, his manager, was a force of nature in his own right. Brilliant, ruthless, and entirely focused on the bottom line. The streak was Parker's brainchild, his masterpiece of marketing, and Elvis was the dazzling brushstroke. The lights dimmed in the showroom, the crowd's murmur rising to an excited buzz. A spotlight hit the stage. "That's your cue," King Frankie said, a hint of genuine affection in his tone. Elvis nodded, took one last fortifying breath, and stepped out. The roar was immediate, deafening, flashbulbs exploded. The energy was electric, washing over him, pulling him into its current. For the next 90 minutes, he wasn't tired, he wasn't conflicted, he was Elvis. He gyrated, he sang, he charmed. He connected with every single person in that room, making them believe they were the only one. He felt their love, their admiration, and for a fleeting moment, the weight of the streak lifted. After the final bow, the sweat dripping down his face, the exhaustion hit him like a physical blow. He walked off stage past the cheering crowd and into the cooler, quieter wings. Frankie was there with a towel and a bottle of water. "Another one for the books, EP?" Frankie said, handing him the water. "Sounded great." "Thanks, Frankie," Elvis panted, taking a long drink. He slumped into a chair in his dressing room, the ornate mirrors reflecting a tired, almost haunted man. The sequins seemed to mock him, glittering too brightly. "You know," Frankie began hesitantly, "you've been doing a lot of extra visits lately to the hospital." Elvis tensed. He hadn't meant for Frankie to notice. For months now, almost a year, he'd been making secret trips to a local children's hospital. It started as a one-off charity visit, but then he met her. "Lily, just doing my part," Elvis said, trying to sound nonchalant as he pulled off his heavy belt. Frankie just nodded, a knowing look in his eyes. He didn't push. That was Frankie's way. He understood that Elvis, for all his fame and fortune, needed something real, something that wasn't about the show. And Lily, a bright-eyed girl with a spirit that defied her frail body, was as real as it got. Lily was 10 years old, a tiny thing with wispy blonde hair, and eyes that held an entire universe of wonder. She had a rare heart condition, one that had kept her in and out of the hospital for most of her young life. Elvis had stumbled into her room one day during a charity event, meant to be a quick handshake and a smile. But Lily, unlike the other kids who screamed or giggled, had simply looked at him with an honest curiosity. "You're a singer, aren't you?" she'd asked, her voice soft but clear. "My grandma loves your songs. She says you sing like an angel." Elvis, used to fan hysteria, had been disarmed. He'd sat on the edge of her bed and they'd talk about her favorite cartoons, about the funny nurses, about the books she was reading. He hadn't sung, hadn't performed. He'd just been Elvis, and Lily had just been Lily. Since then, he'd made it a point to visit her whenever he could. Always late at night after his shows or early in the morning before the grind began, he'd bring her little gifts, a stuffed animal, a new book, once even a tiny toy guitar. He'd read to her, tell her silly stories, and sometimes very quietly he'd sing her a lullaby just for her. Her face would light up in a way that no million-dollar roar from an audience ever could. He'd found a quiet sanctuary in her room, a place where the pressures of the king melted away. She saw past the sequins and the hype. She just saw him, a kind man who made her laugh. But Lily's condition was getting worse. Doctors were talking about a new risky surgery. Their voices hushed, their expressions grave. He'd seen her mother's tear-stained face, her father's weary shoulders, and he felt it too, a heavy ache in his own chest. She's having a rough time," Elvis finally admitted to Frankie, his voice low. "The doctors are preparing for something big next week." Frankie's expression softened. He knew how much these kids meant to Elvis. He'd seen the way Elvis's eyes would cloud over after a particularly difficult visit. "I hope it works out, EP," he said genuinely. Elvis just nodded, staring into the mirror, not at his own reflection, but at the image of a little girl with bright, hopeful eyes. He had 837 shows behind him, but he had no idea what the next week or even the next few days would bring. A feeling of dread, cold and sharp, pricked at him. The streak felt both incredibly important and utterly meaningless. All at once he only knew one thing: he had to be there for Lily no matter what. The thought, once distant, now felt urgent and terrifyingly real. What if, no matter what, meant missing a show? The very idea was scandalous. Impossible. The Colonel would erupt. The fans would riot. The image of Lily's small, trusting hand in his made his choice. Even if unformed, already clear. Elvis slipped out of the hotel just after midnight. The cool desert air, a welcome contrast to the hot enclosed world of the showroom. He drove his car himself, a sleek Cadillac, but kept it understated, pulling on a baseball cap and dark sunglasses, even in the dead of night. It was only a 15-minute drive to the children's hospital, a place that had become his most unlikely refuge. The hospital corridors were quiet, the fluorescent lights humming softly. He knew the way by heart now. Past the nurse's station, where Mrs. Jenkins, a kindly woman with a permanent smile, would give him a knowing nod. She knew his visits weren't for the cameras. She knew they were for Lily. He found Lily awake, propped up in bed, a worn copy of Charlotte's Web in her small hands. Her mother, Sarah, sat beside her, looking weary but offering a soft smile when she saw him. "Elvis," Lily whispered, her eyes widening. A flicker of real joy lit up her pale face. "You came." "Wouldn't miss it, darling," Elvis said, his voice softer than any stage microphone would ever capture. He sat on the edge of her bed, careful not to disturb the IV lines. "Reading about Wilbur, huh? He's a good pig," Lily giggled. "A fragile, beautiful sound." "He is. Charlotte's very clever." About the book. About the funny things the nurses had said, about a new drawing Lily had made. Elvis listened, truly listened. Something he rarely got to do in his daily life. He found himself telling her about his dogs, about the silly things his bandmates did, about the quiet joy of riding his horses at Graceland. He was just a man, sharing stories with a child. Sarah, Lily's mother, watched them with a mix of gratitude and sorrow in her eyes. "She lights up when you're here, Elvis," she said quietly. Once Lily had drifted off to sleep, her tiny hand still clutching his finger. "It means the world. She lights up my world, Sarah," Elvis admitted, his voice rough. "More than you know." He looked down at Lily's sleeping face, so peaceful, so vulnerable. He knew what the doctors had told Sarah. Lily's heart was failing. The surgery scheduled for Thursday was her last, best chance. Thursday, he felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. That was the night of his 838th show. The thought of it twisted inside him. He had already spoken to Colonel Parker about the possibility of rescheduling, even canceling. Just one show, the Colonel had practically choked on a cigar. Cancel. "Are you mad, Elvis?" Parker had bellowed, his face turning a shade of purple. 837 shows? The streak. It's worth millions. It's your legacy. What emergency could possibly be more important than that, huh? Elvis had tried to explain, to mention the child, the dire situation, but Parker had waved him off. Another charity case. Elvis, always with a bleeding heart. Send them a check. Send them a dozen checks. But you, Elvis, you perform. You are the king. The fans depend on you. The money depends on you. Conversation had ended in a stalemate, with Elvis seething and Parker threatening to put out a press release about minor laryngitis if Elvis even thought about it. The pressure was immense. His entire team, the hotel, the thousands of fans who had bought tickets for months in advance, all rested on his shoulders. But so did Lily. Leaving the hospital that night, the city lights of Vegas seemed to mock him. The dazzling neon signs promised endless entertainment, boundless joy. But for him, they just illuminated an impossible choice. He couldn't disappoint his fans, but how could he abandon Lily? Back in his suite, he paced the plush carpet, doing little to absorb the turmoil in his mind. He called Frankie, hoping for some counsel. But even Frankie, usually so understanding, sounded strained. "EP, I know this is tough, Frankie," said, his voice tired through the phone. "Colonel is right. The ripple effect of canceling a show, it's huge. The press would have a field day. People would lose jobs. It's not just your name, it's a whole operation. And Lily," Elvis retorted, his voice tight. "What about a little girl who might not make it through the week? What about her operation?" There was a silence on the other end. Then Frankie sighed. "Look, EP, I wish I had an answer. Maybe you can visit her before the show, or right after. It's a late surgery, isn't it?" "It's scheduled for 8 p.m., Elvis said. The words heavy. His shows started at 8 p.m. They need her parents there, and they need support. She asked me to be there." His voice cracked slightly on the last words. "Oh, Lord," Frankie muttered. That's tight." "Tight doesn't even begin to cover it," Elvis said, rubbing his temples. "I'll figure something out, Frankie. I have to." He spent the next few days in a haze, performing on autopilot, his mind always drifting to Lily. He visited her every spare moment, sometimes just sitting by her bed, holding her hand, trying to memorize every detail of her sweet, brave face. He sang her songs, not as hits, but gentle hymns and lullabies. She was weaker now, but her spirit remained unbroken. On Wednesday night, after his 837th show, he went straight to the hospital. "Elvis," she whispered, her voice barely audible. What if I don't wake up?" He knelt by her bed, stroking her wispy hair. "You will, darling. You're a fighter. And you know what, I'm gonna be right here waiting for you to wake up as soon as I can be." He didn't promise to be there when she went in. He couldn't lie, but he would be as close as humanly possible. He would move heaven and earth. He had to. He held her tight, feeling her small, fragile body against him. The weight of the world, of his fame, of his choice pressed down on him. Tomorrow was the day. And he still didn't have a plan. The morning of the 838th show dawned with a relentless Vegas sun beating down. Elvis hadn't slept. He'd spent the night pacing, calling people, trying to find a solution that didn't exist. He'd even considered flying in another doctor, a specialist, anything to shift the surgery time. But it was too complex, too delicate. Lily's surgery was set, and his show was set. He walked into the dining room of his suite, where a bewildered chef had laid out an untouched breakfast spread. Colonel Parker was already there, puffing on a cigar, his face a picture of smug satisfaction. "Morning, boy," Parker boomed, oblivious to Elvis's weary state. "Feeling rested. Another big night tonight. The papers are calling you a modern marvel. The king of consistency, they said." Elvis sank into a chair, pushing a plate of uneaten eggs away. "Colonel, we need to talk about tonight." Parker's smile didn't waver, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "What about it, Elvis? Everything's on schedule. Sold out naturally, every seat a gold mine." "I can't be there," Elvis said the words, feeling like shards of glass in his throat. He watched Parker's face morph from jovial to incredulous, then to a thunderous purpling rage. "What?" Parker roared, slamming his fist on the table. The china rattled. "Are you out of your mind, Elvis? We just had this conversation. This is unacceptable. This is professional suicide. This is a betrayal of everything we've built." "It's about a little girl, Colonel," Elvis said, his voice low but firm, fighting to stay calm. "Lily. She's having major heart surgery tonight. Her last chance. I promised her I'd be there, or as close as I possibly could." Parker threw his hands up in exasperation. "A little girl. You're going to throw away your career, your reputation, this incredible streak. For some charity case, we send them flowers. We send them money. You do not abandon a full house of paying customers for a child you barely know." "I know her," Elvis said, his voice rising now. "I know her spirit, her courage. I know her fear. She's just a child, Colonel. She needs me. The fans need you," Parker shouted back, standing up and towering over Elvis. "The thousands of fans who adore you, the people who've waited months, saved their hard-earned money to see the king. Are you going to tell them that a sick child is more important than them? Are you going to make me tell them that?" Elvis stood up too, his fists clenching. "Don't you dare put this on them. This is on me. And I'm telling you, I cannot in good conscience sing and dance for a crowd while a little girl I care about is fighting for her life." "Conscience," Parker scoffed. "Your conscience is making us lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. Do you have any idea the chaos this will cause? The backlash? The media frenzy? Elvis Presley, the king of selfishness, abandons his fans for a sentimental whim. Let them say whatever they want. I can live with that. I can't live with myself if I'm not there for her." The argument raged for what felt like hours. Parker tried every tactic. Threats, guilt trips, appeals to loyalty, to money, to his legacy. Elvis remained steadfast. He wouldn't perform. He couldn't. Finally, Parker, his face still red with fury, slammed his hand on the table one last time. "Fine. You want to throw it all away for some sick kid? Fine. But don't expect me to cover for you. This will be a disaster, Elvis. A complete and utter disaster." "I'll take responsibility," Elvis said, his voice shaky but resolute. He felt a strange mix of fear and relief. The decision was made. The weight hadn't lifted, but it had shifted. He was doing the right thing, no matter the cost. He left the suite, ignoring Parker's angry shouts, and found Frankie waiting nervously outside. "It's done, Frankie," Elvis said. "I'm not doing the show tonight." Frankie paled. "Oh, EP, what did the Colonel say?" "He's furious, said it would be a disaster." Elvis shrugged, a weary smile on his face. "Maybe it will be, but I have to go to Lily." Frankie just nodded, his expression grim. "Okay, EP, let me see what I can do to contain the fallout. It's going to be rough." Elvis didn't care about the fallout, not right then. His mind was already at the hospital. He got into his car, the baseball cap pulled low, and drove. He arrived at the hospital an hour before Lily's surgery was scheduled. Sarah, Lily's mother, was pacing in the waiting room, her face etched with worry. Her husband, Tom, sat beside her. Holding her hand, they looked up, startled, when they saw him. How are you doing here? Don't you have a show tonight? I'm here for Lily, Elvis said simply, taking a seat beside them. How is she? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She's scared. They just took her to pre-op. It's happening so fast. Elvis reached out and squeezed her hand. She's a strong girl. She's going to be okay. He believed it. He had to. The waiting room was a sterile, impersonal place, but for Elvis, it was a sanctuary of a different kind here. He wasn't the king. He was just Elvis, a worried friend, a support for a family in pain. He sat there minutes turning into an eternity, the silence punctuated by the soft beeping of medical equipment from down the hall and the frantic pounding of his own heart. He imagined the scene at the International Hotel at that very moment, the rising excitement of the crowd, the lights dimming, the band taking their places, then the realization, the confusion, the murmurs, the announcements. Pictured Parker's red, angry face screaming into the phone, the headlines, the backlash. He felt a pang of regret for the fans he was disappointing, but it was overshadowed by the profound rightness of where he was. Right then the clock ticked towards 8 p.m. Lily was being wheeled into surgery. He felt a surge of nausea, closed his eyes, sending every ounce of his hope and love towards her. He was exactly where he needed to be. The streak was broken, but something far more important had been saved. At the International Hotel, the atmosphere was crackling with anticipation. Thousands of fans dressed in their finest filled the showroom to capacity. Ushers guided latecomers to their seat. The orchestra tuned their instruments, the brass section gleaming under the stage lights. Everyone knew the number, 837. Tonight Elvis would make it 838. A new record, another notch in his already legendary belt. Backstage, however, a frantic energy buzzed. Frankie was on his phone, his face pale, trying to fend off a raging Colonel Parker who was somewhere between his office and the showroom, presumably tearing the place apart. "No, Colonel, he's not here," Frankie hissed into the receiver, running a hand through his hair. "I told you, he said he wasn't doing the show. He went to the hospital. THE hospital." Parker's voice, even muffled through the phone, was a bellow. "FOR? What?" "HE's NOT, sick, HE's crazy. YOU tell, that BOU tell. That BOU tell. That BOU temmed." A murmur rippled through the audience, a collective intake of breath. This was it. The moment. The orchestra Zarathustra, the dramatic theme music Elvis always used. The crowd roared, flashbulbs began to pop, anticipating his grand entrance. Frankie hung up, looking utterly desperate. He glanced at the empty stage, the empty microphone. Stay calm. He had to say something. He had to do something. Crowd's roar slowly died down, replaced by a confused murmur. The orchestra looked at each other, then at the wings, waiting. The music started again, a little softer, a little more hesitant still. No Elvis. A few confused shouts erupted from the audience. "Elvis, where's the king? What's going on?" Finally, a stagehand instructed by Frankie stepped out onto the stage. He looked terribly uncomfortable, almost apologetic. He cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice shaky, we apologize. There's been an unforeseen circumstance tonight. Mr. Presley will not be performing." Collective gasp went through the room, followed by a stunned silence. Then slowly, the murmurs began to rise. "What? Not performing? Is he sick?" But the streak. "The show has been cancelled," the stagehand continued, rushing his words now as the anger and confusion in the crowd grew. "All tickets will be refunded. We apologize for the inconvenience." The announcement was met with a chorus of boos, shouts of disappointment, and a palpable sense of betrayal. People stood up, some yelling, some looking utterly crestfallen. They had traveled, they had waited, they had believed, and the king was a no-show. Meanwhile, back in the hospital waiting room, Elvis sat oblivious to the chaos he had unleashed. He was focused only on the clock on the wall, the slow crawl of the minute hand, each second feeling like an hour. Sarah and Tom sat beside him, equally tense, their hands clasped together. The doctor, a kind-faced woman with tired eyes, finally emerged from the operating room. She pulled off her surgical mask, a weary but hopeful smile on her face. "The surgery was a success," she announced, her voice calm. "Lily is in recovery. It was a long and difficult procedure, but her new heart is strong. She's a very brave little girl." A collective sigh of relief filled the small waiting room. Sarah burst into tears, collapsing into her husband's arms. Elvis felt a wave of dizzying relief wash over him, so powerful it almost knocked him off his feet. Tears welled up in his own eyes unbidden, and he didn't try to stop them. Lily was safe. She had a chance. Can we see her?" Sarah asked, her voice choked with emotion. "Not just yet," the doctor said gently. "She's still heavily sedated. She'll be in intensive care for a few days, but the outlook is very good. You can see her briefly in the morning." Elvis closed his eyes, a profound sense of peace settling over him. He had done it. He had chosen, and the choice had been rewarded. The noise of the disappointed crowd, the fury of Colonel Parker, the headlines that were surely being written right then, none of it mattered. Lily was alive. He stayed for a while longer, offering what comfort he could to Sarah and Tom. He saw the shift in their faces from despair to cautious hope. It was a miracle. When he finally left the hospital, the early morning light was just beginning to paint the sky in soft hues of pink and orange. The city of Las Vegas, usually so vibrant, seemed quiet, almost reverent. He drove back to the hotel, the weight of the street now completely gone, replaced by a lighter, more profound feeling of purpose. He knew what awaited him: the firestorm, the questions, the condemnation. But as he looked at the rising sun, he knew he wouldn't change a thing. The empty stage, the disappointed fans, the furious manager, they were the cost, and Lily's new heart was the priceless reward. He was ready to face the music, whatever kind it might be. The next morning, the headlines screamed, "The King ISANO show. Elvis cancels Vegas streak broken. What happened tale The King." Rumors swirled around Presley's mysterious absence. The phone in Elvis's suite rang off the hook. Colonel Parker, true to his word, had made no attempt to smooth things over. He'd simply announced the cancellation and let the chips fall where they may. And the chips were falling everywhere. Journalists camped outside the hotel, shouting questions at anyone who passed. Fans, still reeling from the disappointment, debated wildly amongst themselves. Was he sick? Was it a contract dispute? Was he having a breakdown? The speculation was rampant and mostly negative. Elvis, however, felt a strange calm. He knew the truth. He'd done the right thing. He spent the morning answering calls from concerned band members and close friends, trying to explain without breaking Lily's privacy. Frankie arrived looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "EP," he began, his voice hoarse. "It's a madhouse out there. The colonel's threatening to fine you for every missed dollar. The hotel is furious. And the media, they're like piranhas." "Let them be," Elvis said, pouring them both a cup of coffee. He hadn't slept, but he felt strangely alert. "What about Lily? Have you heard anything?" "I called the hospital," Frankie admitted, pulling out a chair, "but stable." He paused, looking at Elvis with a mix of awe and concern. "You really did it, EP? You missed the show for her?" "I had to, Frankie," Elvis said simply. "But why didn't you say anything? Why didn't we prepare a statement?" "The colonel could have spun it, made it a human interest story," Frankie exclaimed, gesturing wildly. Elvis shook his head. "'Cause it wasn't about headlines, Frankie. It was about Lily, about her privacy. I didn't want her situation to become a circus. This was personal." "But now you're the circus," Frankie countered, running a hand over his face. "Everyone thinks you're unreliable. Or worse." "Let them think what they want," Elvis repeated. "Let them think what they want. Truth will come out eventually, or it won't. Doesn't matter to me. What matters is Lily is okay." Later that day, feeling refreshed by a long shower and a few hours of quiet contemplation, Elvis decided to visit Lily again. He felt a powerful urge to see her, to know for sure she was all right. He slipped out of the hotel through a service entrance, hoping to avoid the media circus. At the hospital, the atmosphere in the waiting room was different. Sarah and Tom were still there, but their faces held relief, not despair. They were still exhausted, but they offered him genuine, tearful smiles. "She's doing so well, Elvis," Sarah whispered. "The doctors are amazed. She's a little fighter." He was allowed to see her for just a few minutes through a glass window into the ICU. Lily was still hooked up to machines, her little chest rising and falling rhythmically. She was pale, but her lips were no longer blue, and her cheeks held a faint, healthy color. He placed his hand on the glass, feeling an overwhelming wave of emotion. She was going to live. As he stood there, a young nurse, barely out of nursing school, approached him. She recognized him, of course, but her expression was one of quiet admiration, not starstruck awe. "Mr. Presley," she said softly, "thank you." Elvis looked at her confused. "For what?" "For being here," she replied, glancing toward Lily's room. "We all know why you missed your show. The staff, the other families, everyone's talking about it. Not the papers, not the TV, but here inside these walls." She leaned in slightly. "You know, one of the maintenance guys. His daughter was at your show last night. She was so disappointed. But when he told her why you weren't there, she understood. She even said, 'Daddy, that's what a real hero does.'" Elvis felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't expected that. "And," the nurse continued, a gentle smile on her face, "Lily's family, they're so touched. They know you gave up something huge for them." He just nodded, unable to speak. The insignificant, quiet truth, the understanding of a few meant more than any roaring crowd, any glowing headline. He had broken the streak. Yes, but he had gained something far more precious. He had chosen love over fame, and in doing so he had touched lives in a way his music alone never could. As he drove back, the weight of the negative press still hung in the air, but it felt distant. He knew his decision would have consequences, professional and financial. But looking at Lily's steady breathing, the hopeful faces of her parents, he knew with absolute certainty that it was worth every single one. The whispers of the nurses, the understanding of a maintenance worker, the quiet gratitude of a family, that was his real reward. And in the grand, noisy chaos of Vegas, that quiet truth was a melody more beautiful than any he had ever sung. The day after the missed show felt like navigating a battlefield. Colonel Parker was apoplectic. He stormed into Elvis's suite, his face blotchy purple, a cigar clenched so tightly between his teeth it looked like it might shatter. "This is a catastrophe, Elvis," he bellowed, throwing a stack of newspapers onto the coffee table, all blaring headlines about the broken streak and Presley's unexplained absence. "We have lost millions. The hotel is demanding compensation. Your reputation is in tatters. What in God's name are you thinking?" Elvis sat calmly, stirring his coffee. "I was thinking about Lily, Colonel, about a 10-year-old girl fighting for her life." "A 10-year-old girl?" Parker spat, as if the very idea was repulsive. "You trade the king's crown for a child's bedtime story? This is madness. People are calling for your head. They want answers. And you sit here like it's a quiet Sunday morning." "I'm not giving a statement," Colonel Elvis said, his voice flat. "Not a word. I won't use Lily's illness to generate sympathy or headlines. It's her story, not mine to exploit." Parker looked genuinely stunned. You won't even try to fix this to save your own skin. Do you know what this means, Elvis? Do you know what it costs?" "I know," Elvis replied, meeting Parker's furious gaze. "And I don't care about the cost, not when compared to a child's life." The argument continued, a bitter, draining back and forth. Parker threatened lawsuits, contract breaches, public humiliation. Elvis remained unyielding. He had made his choice, and he would stand by it, even if it meant the end of his career. He felt a strange lightness, a freedom in this defiance. The gilded cage of the streak had been broken, and for the first time in a long time he felt truly himself. News of the tension between Elvis and Parker began to leak. Whispers about artistic differences and management disputes started to circulate, adding fuel to the already raging fire of speculation. Fans were divided. Some felt betrayed, others simply confused. A small but growing number, however, felt a stirring of something else. Curiosity, then admiration. It started subtly. A few letters from fans arrived, not condemning him, but expressing concern, asking if he was okay. Some mentioned hearing a rumor about a child, a quiet whisper that hadn't yet reached the sensational headlines. Then a surprising phone call came. It was from the director of the children's hospital, Dr. Anya Hama. She was a stern, no-nonsense woman, but her voice on the phone was warm. "Mr. Presley," she began, "I just wanted to call and thank you. Your presence here, the comfort you gave Lily's family. It meant the world in your understanding of Lily's privacy, your decision not to turn this into a spectacle. Yours truly remarkable." Elvis felt a warmth spread through him. "How is she?" "She's making excellent progress," Dr. Sharma confirmed. "A strong little girl, but Mr. Presley, I wanted to ask you something. You're getting a lot of negative attention, and while I completely respect your desire for private spreken take your discovery, but he also didn't want the fans who had loved him for so long to think he had simply abandoned them without cause." "What do you have in mind, Doctor?" he asked. "We have a charity gala coming up next month," she explained. "A silent auction. Many generous people donate items. Perhaps you could donate something subtle, something that, to those who know, would hint at your compassion without revealing Lily's identity. Or exporting her." Elvis thought about it. A silent auction. No speeches, no cameras, just an item that spoke for itself. "I think I might have an idea, Doctor," he said, a faint smile touching his lips. Meanwhile, Frankie, despite his initial panic, had started working behind the scenes. He wasn't like Parker. He saw the human side of Elvis, the kind, generous heart that often got overshadowed by the flash and the fame. He couldn't defy Parker openly, but he could observe. He could listen, and he could strategically share little pieces of truth without betraying Elvis's trust. He started, subtly mentioning to trusted journalists off the record that Elvis had been deeply distressed by a personal emergency, hinting at something beyond his control that involved someone very close to his heart. He never mentioned a child or a hospital, but he planted the seeds of doubt about the selfish king narrative. "He's been under immense pressure, you know," Frankie would say, leaning in conspiratorially. "This streak has taken a toll. And sometimes even the king has to be just a man." The shift was slow, almost imperceptible at first. A few column inches dedicated to speculating about Elvis's secret sorrows. A fan magazine asking, "Is there more to the story of Elvis's missing show?" The tide of public opinion, so swift to condemn, was now beginning to turn just a fraction. Elvis, meanwhile, found solace in his quiet visits to Lily. She was awake now, weak but bright-eyed, her spirit undimmed. He read to her, made her laugh with silly voices, and watched with profound gratitude as she slowly regained her strength. He brought her a small, specially engraved locket, a tiny guitar charm on it. "For courage, darling," he'd whispered, placing it gently around her neck. He knew the firestorm wasn't over. Colonel Parker was still fuming. The public was still confused. But in the quiet sanctuary of Lily's hospital room, surrounded by the simple, profound truth of compassion, Elvis felt a deeper peace than any standing ovation had ever given him. The broken streak was a testament not to failure, but to a triumph of the heart. Weeks passed. Lily was moved out of the ICU and into a regular room, her color improving each day. Elvis continued his quiet visits, always making sure he was discreet. He'd bring her small gifts, tell her stories, and sometimes He'd just sit there holding her hand, watching her sleep. He found a quiet comfort in the routine, a grounding force in the whirlwind of his life. The media frenzy around his missed show had somewhat died down, but the mystery remained. Colonel Parker, unable to control Elvis, had tried to spin it as a sudden, severe illness that Elvis was bravely recovering from. But the vagueness only fueled more speculation. Some fans still felt angry. Others worried, but a new current was flowing. Quiet understanding. This understanding often came from unexpected places. Like the letters that started arriving at Graceland handwritten by ordinary people. Mr. Presley, one read from a woman in Ohio. I heard a whisper about why you missed your show. If it's true, God bless you. Sometimes being a good man is more important than being a king. Another from a father in Texas. My boy has been in the hospital for months. I understand that feeling of helplessness. Whatever it was, I hope you found peace. Elvis kept these letters in a special box. Then came the Children's Hospital Charity Gala. Elvis didn't attend. He knew his presence would draw too much attention, turning the focus from the hospital's important work to his own controversy, but he had prepared his donation. Frankie, who had grown increasingly supportive of Elvis's actions, helped him arrange the delivery. The item was simple. A custom-made, miniature sequined jumpsuit, identical in every detail to the ones Elvis wore on stage. It was displayed in a glass case at the silent auction. Beside it, a small silver-framed photo, not of Elvis, but of a small, delicate hand holding a tiny toy guitar. And underneath the photo, a single handwritten note on a card. For the smallest, bravest heart I know, may your future be filled with music and joy. EP. The item caused a quiet stir. Some attendees recognized the jumpsuit, of course. But it was the photo and the note that truly captured attention. There was no name, no overt explanation. Just a poignant hint of deep affection and quiet sacrifice. The bid for the jumpsuit quickly escalated, far surpassing its estimated value. It was bought by a famous Hollywood actress known for her philanthropy, who had quietly heard the rumors swirling around Elvis's true reason for missing the show. She paid a staggering sum, not for the memorabilia itself, but for what it represented. The story, still unspoken by Elvis, began to spread through the whispers of those who attended the gala. A famous singer, a secret donation, a tiny jumpsuit, a message of hope to a brave child. It wasn't concrete, it wasn't a confirmed report, but it was enough. The narrative began to shift. Elvis wasn't a selfish star. He was a deeply compassionate man who had made a heartbreaking choice. Back at the hospital, Lily was getting stronger. One sunny afternoon, Elvis arrived to find her sitting up in bed. Drawing intently, he sat beside her, watching her tiny hand guide the crayon. "Look, Elvis," she said, holding up a drawing. It was of a bright red heart with a tiny smiling stick figure on one side, and a larger figure with a guitar on the other. A rainbow arched over them. "It's my new heart, and you helped make it better." Elvis's eyes stung. "You made it better, darling. You're the one with all the fight. My mummy told me you missed your big show for me," Lily whispered, her voice full of awe. "She said you're a real hero." Elvis pulled back, looking into her innocent eyes. "I just did what any friend would do, Lily. You're very special." Pulled out a small, intricately folded paper object from his pocket. It was a paper crane folded perfectly with tiny details on its wings. "My grandmother used to make these for me when I was a boy," he explained. "She said they brought good luck, and that for every 1,000 cranes you fold, you get a wish." Lily's eyes lit up. "A wish?" "Yeah," Elvis smiled. "But you only need one because you're so strong. This one's for you." He carefully placed it on her bedside table. "For your healthy, happy future." Lily carefully picked up the crane, her small fingers tracing its delicate folds. "Thank you, Elvis," she said. her voice brimming with sincerity. "This is the best gift ever." He stayed with her for hours, reading, talking, simply being. For a moment, the world outside the Colonel, the media, the pressure faded away. There was just him and Lily, and the quiet, profound joy of a life saved, a choice made. As he drove away that evening, a bright sunset painting the desert sky, Elvis felt a strange sense of clarity. The path ahead was uncertain. Colonel Parker was still threatening. His comeback would be watched with fierce scrutiny. But he had a ribbon of hope now, woven from Lily's resilience and the quiet understanding of a few good people. It was enough. It was more than enough. The whispers grew louder. The story of the miniature jumpsuit, the cryptic note, and the record-breaking bid at the charity gala found its way into society columns and then gradually into the more mainstream entertainment. No one explicitly stated Lily's name or even confirmed the hospital, but the implication was clear. Elvis had missed his show not out of whim or illness, but for a profound act of compassion. The tide of public opinion began to turn. Letters of anger slowly morphed into letters of concern, then admiration. Fans who had initially felt betrayed now wrote expressing deep respect. As bays like "Pound of Visa Heart of Cold" and "Pound Their Rocking" started to appear on burgeoning social media platforms, though still nascent. In that era, Colonel Parker, ever the opportunist, slowly began to shift his tune. He still fumed privately about the lost revenue, but he saw the change in public sentiment. His threats against Elvis softened, replaced by a grudging acceptance that this personal emergency might in fact be good for his client's image in the long run. "All right," Elvis Parker grumbled one morning, lighting a fresh cigar. "So, you're a humanitarian now. Fine. But we need to get you back on stage. People are starting to think you've retired to open a children's clinic." Elvis finally agreed. His prolonged absence had been necessary, but he missed the stage. He missed his band, the music, the unique connection with his fans. But he wanted his return to be different. Not a triumphant assertion of his old streak, but a grateful acknowledgement of the journey he'd been on. "I'll perform," Elvis said, "but on my terms. No talk of the streak, and I want to do something for the hospital." A benefit concert. Parker nearly choked on his cigar again. "A benefit? After all this, Elvis, we need to recoup our losses, not give away more money." "It's not giving away money, Colonel," Elvis said, his voice firm. "It's giving back. It's showing the world what truly matters." After much heated debate, Parker reluctantly agreed, seeing the potential for good press. A special welcome back concert was announced, with a significant portion of the proceeds going to the Children's Hospital. The day of the concert, the International Hotel showroom was packed again, but the atmosphere was different. There was less of the usual frantic excitement, more of a quiet, respectful anticipation. The media was out in full force, curious to see how Elvis would address his absence. Backstage, Elvis felt a familiar mix of nerves and exhilaration. Frankie stood beside him, giving him a thumbs up. "They're with you, EP," he whispered. "They understand." Elvis nodded, a lump in his throat. He thought of Lily now home from the hospital, recovering bravely. He'd spoken to her mother just that morning. Lily was watching the concert on TV from her living room, clutching the paper crane. The lights dimmed. The opening notes of "Also Sprach Zarathustra" filled the air. This time, when the music reached its peak, Elvis stepped out. The roar of the crowd was as powerful as ever. But there was a new depth to it. It wasn't just adoration. It was understanding, respect, and a profound sense of welcome. He waved, took a deep bow, and then, before launching into his first song, he paused. The music faded. The crowd fell silent. He walked to the microphone, his face serious, his eyes searching the faces in the audience. "Well," he began, his voice raspy with emotion, "it's good to be back." A wave of applause. He let it wash over him, then continued. "You all know I missed a show a few weeks back, and there's been a lot of talk, a lot of questions. I didn't say anything then because it wasn't my story to tell. But I want to say something now." He paused again, taking a deep breath. "Life, folks, is a funny thing. Sometimes the most important things in life aren't the bright lights, the sold-out shows, or the records. Sometimes they're the quiet moments, the moments you spend with someone who needs you, someone who's fighting a battle you can't even imagine." He didn't name Lily. He didn't have to. Quiet understanding spread through the room like wildfire. Gasps, murmurs of recognition, tears in some eyes. "I learned a lot during my time away," Elvis continued, his voice steady now. "I learned that a streak of 837 shows is amazing. It's something I'm proud of. But helping a single person, making a difference in one life, it's worth more than any number." He gestured towards the audience. "I know some of you were disappointed, and for that I am truly sorry, but I hope tonight you understand. I hope you know that sometimes the king has to be just a man who makes choices, not always for the crowd, but for what's right in his heart." He looked directly into the camera, knowing Lily was watching. "And to that brave soul who taught me this lesson," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "thank you. Thank you for showing me what courage truly is." He picked up his guitar. "So tonight," he said, a genuine heartfelt smile spreading across his face, "let's just make some music, music from the heart, for all the brave hearts out there." The crowd erupted. This wasn't just a concert. It was a testament, a moment of profound connection between an icon and his admirers. Elvis launched into suspicious minds, but every note, every movement felt imbued with a new depth, a new meaning. The king was back, and he was more than just the king. He was a symbol of compassion, a testament to the power of a single selfless choice. The road to redemption had begun, paved not with gold, but with a ribbon of hope and a profound truth. Elvis's return concert was a triumph, but not in the way Colonel Parker usually measured triumphs. It wasn't just about ticket sales or records broken. It was about something far deeper. The media, initially skeptical, picked up on the emotional resonance of his speech. The vague rumors about his compassionate absence finally coalesced into a widely accepted narrative. Tragic show he missed became a story of profound selflessness. The benefit concert for the Children's Hospital was a massive success, raising more money than anyone had anticipated. Elvis made a point of visiting the hospital frequently. After that, not just Lily, but other children as well. He became a quiet patron, often arriving unannounced, bringing joy and comfort to those who needed it most. He never sought credit, always deflecting praise to the hospital staff or the children's own bravery. His relationship with Lily deepened. She became a little sister to him, a source of unwavering innocence and joy. He taught her simple guitar chords, read her stories, and celebrated every small victory in her recovery. She was his secret, his grounding force, and a constant reminder of the choice he had made. Colonel Parker, ever pragmatic, had to admit that Elvis's public image had never been stronger. The public loved a hero, especially one who chose kindness over fame. King of consistency had become the king with a heart of gold. It was a brand Parker could work with, even if it wasn't the one he'd originally envisioned. "You know," Elvis Parker admitted one day grudgingly, "this little incident, it actually paid off. People are talking about you in a new way, more human, more relatable." Elvis just smiled. "Good, Colonel. That's all I ever wanted to be." The number 837 remained etched in history, a testament to his incredible run, but he never felt the need to surpass it, to prove anything to anyone. The pressure was gone. He performed with renewed vigor, a deeper connection to his music and his audience. Every show felt more authentic, less of a performance, more of a shared experience. One afternoon, a few months after the missed show, Elvis was visiting Lily. She was sitting in a wheelchair by the hospital garden, her blonde hair catching the sunlight, looking healthier and brighter than he'd ever seen her. "Elvis," she said, looking up at him, a serious expression on her face, "do you ever miss being the king of consistency?" He chuckled softly. "Sometimes, darling. It was a good title, I suppose. but being the king of anything isn't as important as just being happy and being true to yourself. Lily nodded thoughtfully. My mummy says you taught me how to be brave, but I think you're the brave one. Elvis smiled, ruffling her hair. We're both brave, Lilybug. In our own ways. He had truly changed. The constant need for validation, the exhausting pursuit of the next record had lessened. He found more joy in the simple things. A quiet evening at Graceland. A drive through the countryside. The laughter of a child. His spiritual journey, always important to him, deepened. He sought less from the world and gave more. The impact of his choice echoed far beyond the immediate aftermath. Other celebrities inspired by his quiet act began to engage in more meaningful philanthropy, less for the cameras and more for the cause. The conversation in Hollywood shifted subtly towards a greater emphasis on giving back, on using fame for good. Lily, meanwhile, thrived, her new heart beat strong and steady. She returned to school, made new friends, and pursued her love of drawing and music. She grew into a remarkable young woman, always carrying the memory of the king who had broken his streak for her. She never spoke publicly about their special bond, respecting his quiet wish for her privacy, but she carried his lesson of compassion and courage in her own life, becoming an advocate for children's health, a quiet force for good. The story of the missed show, the tragic one, became a legend in its own right. Not tragic in the sense of loss, but tragic in the sense of the deep personal sacrifice. A king choosing to step off his throne even for a moment, for a higher purpose. It was a story told in hushed tones, revered for its profound humanity. And Elvis, he continued to perform, to record, to captivate audiences. He was still the king, in every sense of the word, but he was also something more. He was a man who had faced an impossible choice, and had chosen love, and in that choice he had found a truer, deeper kind of royalty, one that transcended fame and fortune. His legacy, already immense, now carried an even more powerful message. That true greatness lies not in how many shows you sell out, but in the size of your heart. Years turned into decades. The roaring 70s gave way to the new millennium, and the world changed in countless ways. But the legend of Elvis Presley, the king, endured. And woven into the fabric of that legend, an indelible thread, was the story of the 838th show, the one he missed. It became a quiet touchstone, a moment whispered about among fans, a topic of hushed reverence in documentaries and biographies. It wasn't a scandal anymore, it was a testament, powerful reminder that even the biggest stars are at their core human beings capable of extraordinary acts of kindness. Elvis continued his career touring and recording, but his life was different. He maintained his secret visits to the Children's Hospital, expanding his quiet acts of charity to other causes he believed in. He sponsored families, funded medical research, and championed children's welfare, always preferring to work behind the scenes, away from the glare of publicity. He sought no accolades for these deeds. The quiet satisfaction was his only reward. Lily grew up, healthy and vibrant. She went to college, studied music and art, and eventually became a music therapist at a children's hospital. Herself, not the one where she had been a patient, but one in another state. She dedicated her life to helping children find healing and hope through creativity, just as Elvis had done for her. She never spoke publicly about her connection to Elvis, respecting his lifelong commitment to her privacy. But in her heart, she carried the echo of his kindness, the memory of his warm hand, and the paper crane he had given her always nestled safely in her bedside drawer. Sometimes, when she played a gentle melody for a frightened child, she would imagine Elvis beside her, lending his voice to the quiet song. She knew that the greatest gift he had given her was not just a second chance at life, but the profound lesson that true strength lay in compassion. Elvis, in his later years, often reflected on that pivotal moment. He never regretted breaking the streak. In fact, he often said in private moments with Frankie or other trusted friends that it was the best decision he ever made. It had freed him, not just from the relentless pressure of the streak, but from a part of himself that had become too focused on external validation. It had allowed him to connect with his own heart and with the hearts of others on a deeper level. He looked back on the initial furor, Colonel Parker's threats, the angry headlines with a wry smile. All that noise, all that concern for money and image, had faded into insignificance compared to the profound joy he felt when he saw Lily thriving. The International Hotel, the stage where he had performed 837 consecutive shows, remained a landmark. And for those who knew the story, it wasn't just a place of incredible performances. It was also the place where the king had chosen compassion over crown, humanity over legend. When Elvis finally passed away, the world mourned its king. But for those who knew the quiet truth, his legacy was not just about the music, the charisma, or the electrifying performances. It was also about the man who had the courage to put a child's life above his own unparalleled success. His music continued to inspire generations, his image iconic, but for those touched by his selfless act, his true enduring melody wasn't found in a sold-out concert hall, but in the quiet, compassionate beat of his extraordinary heart. The missed show, the single break in an unbreakable streak, became his greatest performance of all, a performance of love, sacrifice, and unwavering human connection. And in the hearts of those who understood it, resonated louder and more beautifully than any applause could ever do.